Hi, I'm Christopher Mitchell, and thank you for tuning in. I run the Community Broadband Networks program at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, but for the purposes of today, I'm also one of the co-founders of the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp, and I'm on the board of Waskawiwin, which is what is bringing you the business of tribal broadband today. And I just glitched a little bit. I got a camera that I cannot figure out. I've gone through multiple cameras, and it's just something on the computer. So sorry. Um, for the presentation today, we are focused on helping tribal nations expand internet access at Waskawiwin. That's what we do. We host the tribal broadband boot camps. We're trying to do more of these interactive sessions to get people out sharing their experiences. And at our recent tribal broadband boot camp with the Inland Northwest Tribal, the Inland Northwest Tribal Broadband Coalition, we met Brodie Ford with Spokane Broadband Services. And we asked him to redo a presentation he did at that event, which is about building wireless links. And we asked Matthew Douglas from Hoopa Valley Public Utility District and Acorn Wireless. He goes by Spaggy. We asked him to do a little bit of commentary so they could go back and forth as they go over how to build the wireless links. Spaggy's been a regular at the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp since the first one. So now I'm going to turn over the mic to Brodie to introduce himself. And then after Spaggy comes in, they'll get going and I'll get out. Welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm Brodie Ford. I work with Spokane Broadband Services. That is a program under the Spokane Tribe of Indians, and I work as a network engineer. To you, Spaggy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Douglas. I go by Spaggy. I am the broadband manager for the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District. Yeah, that's pretty much my story, where I'm at.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to the presentation, and you won't see him again unless something catches on fire. So good luck.
Thanks, Chris. Can you pull up the slides, please, Jordan? Awesome. So to begin, thank you all for joining us today. Spaggy and I will be doing a wireless deployment how-to, and we would obviously like to offer a disclaimer to you all that by no means are we experts. We just have a lot of experience on what to do and more experience on what not to do. So definitely take that and build it out how you want to, but here's just kind of a small blueprint of what you can follow to ensure your wireless world is doing good. Next slide, please, Jordan. So to begin, we're going to cover a P2P. You might be asking, what is that? It is a point-to-point, which is essentially two microwave radios communicating between each other. We're just going to cover an example. We're going to have a theory portion, which is just me pretty much talking, and then we'll have an application portion, which will go through a live example. Next slide, please, Jordan.
Just so we can like put ourselves in the right mindset. You know, there's different types of wireless out there. I'm pretty sure you're going to cover this later on too, but can you kind of explain in what use case you'd want to pick a point-to-point solution real quick, just to get us in that right mindset?
Sure. So when figuring out what wireless solution to do, you'd use a point-to-point if you have a tough area on your reservation or within your city that you can't really get to, you can't run anything to. Let's say you have issues with permitting for fiber, or you have other issues with deploying like a wireless solution for a point-to-multipoint. A point-to-point solution allows you to kind of get around all of that. And also, just depending on how far the wireless shot is, you could get more throughput out of it if you use a point-to-point solution. So that helps.
And are there so like for our network, we had to use several point-to-points to be able to get internet to us. Middle mile fiber was pretty expensive. We're about 60 miles from the nearest internet source. I just kind of, I guess, add in there that I think our longest shot for a point-to-point dish is around 25 miles. So you can cover a lot of distance for, I think the gear was around $50,000. So that's pretty good bang for your buck to get some data to your reservation or business.
For sure. Thanks, Josh. Jumping right into it, we're going to cover the steps to get a microwave setup. So this, again, is in theory. This is a review and assess portion. We'd encourage you to first review and assess your funding sources. Ensure that each of the products you're going to buy for your wireless setup has a line item within your budget. Be reasonable, but also if you can within your budget, have a contingency, because working with wireless solutions and anything in broadband, there's always something that could come up and you want to ensure that you are prepared for it. So definitely be aware of that when you're building your budgets. The next step, review and assess your service needs. So determine what you're trying to do with this point-to-point link. Determine the amount of throughput you need it to do. Determine the amount of traffic you expect to go through it. Determine the path link. Determine the best way for it to ensure that you have the best service available for your customers. The next step, what we like to do when in this review and assess portion, is for the frequency availability. We work closely with CommSearch to ensure that we're allowed to utilize that frequency we're using for this point-to-point link. A lot of our links are 11 gig links, 11 gigahertz links. That's what we like to run on our reservation, just because we're a little bit spread out. And as you all know, the farther distance you go, the lower your frequency is going to be most of the time. So if you can work with CommSearch or Micronet, that's another one as well, to ensure you have the frequencies available to run this point-to-point link.
So I think they call those frequency coordinators, right?
Yes.
Is there, have you ever ran into like an outfit that does their own frequency coordination, or is this typically outsourced?
For me, when I've been working in this, it's been outsourced to like CommSearch or Micronet, because they have a lot of the tools and they have a good relationship with like the FCC and other groups.
Okay, so it's a component that tribes should consider, that if they're going to use, and we didn't touch on it quite yet, but licensed versus unlicensed frequencies, when they go down that license path, they should definitely try and work with an outside firm.
For sure. Yep. And next in our list, we'll get to that, just like Spaggy alluded to, but next in our list is a licensing cost. There are unfortunately some costs that go with it, but definitely reach out again to CommSearch and Micronet and let them know like what your project plan is, so they can assist you with all your licensing needs. So that way you can submit one big application in, instead of like piecemealing it together to where you have to wait for certain things to come before you can deploy your equipment. So, and just like Spaggy said previously in the next one, number 5, review and assess your licensing requirements with the FCC. This is only if you're going to be using a license link. The license link, there's different frequency availabilities for those license links, so you do have to register them with the FCC. However, you do not have to actually do a license with the FCC if you're using an unlicensed link. And Spaggy, do you want to touch on that a little bit more, licensed versus unlicensed?
Yeah, there's basically, for the point-to-point world that we're kind of in right now, we have some 60 gigahertz frequencies. So that specific band of frequency is unlicensed, and we are able to put that up without coordinating with the FCC. But the problem with it is that because we don't have to coordinate, anybody can jump on it. So if people start jumping on, there'll be some interference. And so that's kind of the unlicensed world. Whereas on the licensed side, as we coordinate with the FCC, we can ensure that as best as we can, at least it's our lawful right to have that frequency. So then if anybody else wants to broadcast, we can either try and get them to not interfere with our service, or I guess that's about it. You can just try and get them off your frequency range so that you can broadcast smoothly, cleanly.
For sure. Thanks for that, Spaggy. The last thing in this process is review and assess your microwave equipment vendors. I put 2 of them up there. There's plenty out there, Cambium, Aviat, a couple others, but definitely reach out. And again, steps 1 through 5, work through those with the goal in mind of getting an equipment vendor that can fulfill those needs. Next slide, please, Jordan. So now we're going to go through the purchasing part of this theory portion. So if you can work with your procurement department, for us at the Spokane Tribe, we have a procurement department that we have to go through. There's a lot of steps to follow. And if you have that, definitely follow those steps in whatever terms you have as well. But with that in there, you're going to have to license your microwaves. Obviously, like we talked about before, if you're going to use those license links, purchase the microwave equipment. And again, when you're purchasing it, I put the little sub step in there on part C right here. Purchase all the necessary items associated with your microwave installation. And when you're talking to your microwave vendors, share your project plan with them as well to ensure that you have all the equipment necessary to do that project. I think, at least in my realm, a couple of times I've unfortunately just went through and ordered some microwave equipment. I didn't buy the right shackle gear. I didn't buy the right cabling. So now when I go through and we're doing a project like these point-to-point links, I ensure that I share the entire project with that vendor just to make sure that I'm not missing anything with that project that would hold us up from doing the installation.
Yeah, I've ran into those mistakes as well. I've gotten used to, like, if we're gonna mount some gear to a tower, like an actual cell phone tower, we try and get the manufacturer and the height that we are on that tower over to the vendor, so that they can take a look at what the leg type is and the best mounting gear to get for it. And there's a little bit more outside that too in terms of the gear to protect it, with an ice shield over it for if you're in a snowy climate, which we are. And we also, it gets pretty windy in our area, so we have to inform them that it is getting pretty windy, so that they can add in additional support bars.
For sure. I think too, if you can, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this previously, but build it out on some type of network designer, network planner, build that point-to-point link to see what it looks like. Again, it's all in theory, but for us, what we like to do on our things is get a drone out there and fly it up to the certain point where we're going to mount our microwave equipment on both sides just to see if we have that clear view. We take some pictures, go back and review them, because then we can assess whether or not we should or shouldn't use that link at that height. If we need to go higher, we can. If not, we can go lower. Just definitely use all the resources you can prior to purchasing your equipment. And the last,
sorry to interrupt. Do you hire a firm to kind of do those before you purchase? There's like these path calculations that you have to figure out whether or not it's possible or not. Do you do that in-house, or do you outsource that aspect as well?
So we do a little bit of it in-house, but then we verify with an outsourced company, usually the microwave vendor, because they use their own path link that they have, just because I want to ensure, and by no means am I an expert, so I want to check my work with another vendor or with another source to ensure that, yeah, it makes sense or it lines up. It doesn't have to be the exact same as what we've ran, but it's, got to be similar enough to where we're confident in the project.
Okay.
For sure. And the last thing on this slide, the last portion, the last step of this, contract with a company for installation. We at the Spokane Tribe, unfortunately, do not have any rated climbers to install this stuff. So we contract a local company to come and do it for us. And if you're in our case where you don't have people to climb and install stuff, definitely build a relationship with a company of that nature to assist you with not only these type of projects, but also tower maintenance and everything else that comes along with operating a wireless broadband tower. And Spade, can you speak on your situation? I think yours is a little bit different.
Yeah, so we originally hired a contractor to start out, helping us learn to climb and learning the safety strategies. And then once we got comfortable with that, we sent our technicians off to tower climbing training. It's like a self-rescue training. And we also sent them to a rigging training so that they learned how to rig up a dish or a sector appropriately so that you don't have to break your back pulling the equipment up onto the tower. You can actually use some more elegant methods of lifting. And it makes the job it's almost like I guess the worry is that it's going to take a lot longer because you're doing it safe, or but doing it in a safe manner actually makes the work go a lot faster and smoother than doing it not in the appropriate manner. So if a tribe does want to take on tower climbing in-house, definitely invest in that training, because it made the job so much easier to do it the right way.
For sure. I'm with you there. Next slide, please, Jordan. So the last part we're going to dive into for this theory portion is the setup and install of your microwaves. Again, through my trials and tribulations, I've set up microwaves while they're being pathed in. That's definitely not the way to do it. If you can, get a nice workbench or a work table where you can get these microwaves pathed in. Pathed in means that the microwaves are talking to each other on both ends. So if you can, work with the contractor if you don't have it in-house, or work with whomever you need to. But when you set these up, do it on a bench or a table, wherever you can, to get these ready to go. The first step I would encourage you all to do is to go into demo mode. If you don't, your radio will yell at you that you do not have the license key set in there yet. If you have the license key, awesome, definitely punch it in there, but it is a long key, so I like to just go into demo mode, just so that way it quit asking me for that. The next thing you want to do on your microwave is set the transmit and receive frequencies. These frequencies are what Spaggy and I were talking about previously. The transmit on one radio is the receive on the other, and those are granted to you by the licensing place that you work with, either ComSearch, Micronet, or whomever. You'll see that on the data sheet on that prior coordination notice. You'll be able to see what frequencies you're set to. Another thing that I learned is make sure the radio you have can fulfill those frequencies. Just a brief story. We had an unfortunate situation where we were trying to do a point-to-point shot with these microwaves, these, again, 11 gigahertz microwaves, and it wasn't working. And we had to pull them down for like 3 days, and I was, kind of frustrated. And we looked, and the parameters were flip-flopped for the radios. So if you can, tag and bag, I call it tag and bagging your radio, where you get the frequency set up on your bench, they work on the bench, put tags on them, put little sticky notes or whatever you have on them, labelers, and then put those two in a bag together. So that way, if your contractor or your own teammate comes up to do it, they have the right radio, so they don't flip-flop them like they did in our instance. So
that happened to us too. It wasn't something that we installed. I have to, state that first, but we did have we had to purchase a link from another tribal department, and the frequencies were on the opposite sides. We had to actually take them down, drive the radios from one side to the other. And this was, I want to say, an 11-mile link. So it wasn't just a quick down and drive over. It was a long drive to get over there with the production network down. So making sure that you're on the right sides definitely matters.
For sure. And going to the next step, set up the XPIC. If you can, get XPIC. For those of you who don't know, it's cross polarization between the two radios. So within them, you can do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Spaggy, but within a lot of the radios we have, there's two radios within the microwave. So that way you can do the horizontal and vertical link of them, which means in layman's terms, you can utilize both of those radios to send and receive traffic. So that way you're doubling the amount of throughput you have out of that microwave. So if you can, it is a little bit extra to purchase that, but it's definitely worth it in the end, because now you have the full capacity of that microwave to serve not only your current customers, but future customers if you decide to add on different multi-point equipment, which we'll talk about later. So definitely do it if you can. Earlier, the better.
Yeah.
Next,
and that,
sorry, go ahead, Spaggy.
That was determined by if you had enough availability on your frequency coordination, because some of our links, we weren't able to get a full XPIC setup because of the limitation of the frequency.
Gotcha. Okay. And definitely check again with your frequency coordinator for sure. The next thing on this slide, we're going to talk about Number 5, set up the network parameters. Definitely build it, again, in design to have the right network parameters on here with your right IPs and the right subnets. A lot of that's pretty basic and straightforward, but just ensure, again, that they're the right numbers you're punching in there.
Oh,
The next, oh,
did you ever run into a problem like when we purchased our first set of radios? We didn't know that the manufacturer like charges for actual network of like features of networking. And so like we weren't able, like they limited, like we purchased a link that can do 2.5 gigs, but they didn't sell us the extra license that allows it to go up to 2.5 gigs. So these manufacturers, I don't know if you ever ran into this, but there's like functionality you have to unlock with license keys. Did you have to do that too in any of your projects?
yeah, so that's why we share our plans with the vendor now. So that way they give us in the quote all of the unlocked access that we need out of that microwave. Otherwise, because we ran in the first one we ran into that instance where we said, hey man, this is supposed to be running like 10 gigs up and down with this dual band link. And they're like, oh, you have to buy the registration key for that. And we're like, oh, well, I guess we'll be doing that tomorrow. So definitely be aware of that. Good call, Spaggy, for sure.
Yeah.
Number 6 on this list, unmute the microwave. I've ran into instances where I'm working on the bench and for whatever reason, I decided to mute one side. They were testing, they weren't getting anything. So we had to go to the tower and I had to unmute it. So make sure on your bench, as you're done, you unmute both the radios, microwaves, you make sure all of them are good to go. That way, when you hand them off or you go to deploy them yourself, they're ready to rock and roll. So this is all stuff that we do, again, on the bench. If all else fails, a lot of these microwaves I've noted on number 7 here, you could follow the installation wizard, which is awesome for most of these microwaves. They're pretty easy to use, pretty intuitive. So definitely follow that if you can. It's pretty straightforward. You should have all your numbers.
Can you have the manufacturer kind of help you configure those, or are you pretty much left alone to do it yourself?
I've noticed it depends on the manufacturer. So you can coordinate, and again, this is up to you. You can coordinate time with the manufacturer depending on whom they are. And you can walk through that installation to ensure you've set the radio up to what you want it to be.
And you said that you contract out your tower climbing. Are there any parameters that you have to give to the contractor? Because we do it ourselves. So if we make a mistake, we'll just climb back up and correct it. But you pretty much don't want to have the contractor doing a whole bunch of different changes because climb times can be expensive, I'm assuming. So do you have like a list that you give to your installers?
Yes, great question. That leads us to number 8. When they path the link, whether it's in-house or outsourced, you have them follow the PCN sheet, the prior coordination notice sheet. So that way they're able to see what the link should be and how high or low it should be. So that way you're within the frequency coordination that you've set up with that frequency coordinator. That's what we do. We walk through it with our contracting company. We share the sheet with them that we received in our case from ComSearch. And then that contractor looks at all of the information related to that link and follows it to the T to ensure that we're within regulation to what we've submitted to the FCC.
And are you 100% on your own infrastructure, or do you have third-party towers that you get on?
Thankfully, we are 100% for our main links. We do have a third party as our backup link.
Okay, because we are on a 5-tower hop to get into the valley. There are 3 towers that we actually had to get on. There was a few requirements before we can put our gear up. One was an insurance thing. I forget exactly what the insurance was called, but basically it said that if we caused any damage to the tower or to the other tenants on the tower, that it would cover that damage cost. And there was a second insurance for the tower climber itself that we had to have on hand. And the last was they required that any additional gear that went on the tower had to do what's called a load analysis on that tower to ensure that we weren't putting gear on a tower that went over capacity in terms of it's called a wind load. I don't know all the details of it because I'm not an engineer, but we had to hire a firm, and that was kind of tedious to find a firm. So it's not like every day you have you have to do a wind load analysis. So we just asked around people that we knew in the industry to get a couple of recommendations. But those are some things on third-party towers that I thought might be worth noting.
For sure, and definitely for whoever's watching, follow that along as well, because some of you may have the same situation that Spaggy ran into. Definitely. Okay. Next slide, Jordan, please. Okay, so now we're at the portion where we're going to go over an example. Again, this is just an example that Spaggy and I are going to run through of us just setting up a mock point-to-point link. So in this example, our budget is $50,000. That's how much money we have to play with our point-to-point link here. We have the goal of creating a link that handles our customer traffic. So again, this is just an example. Kind of jot down your situation if you can in this application portion to kind of help you work through certain things. Number 3 for us, the frequency. In this example, again, we're going to work with ComSearch to secure our proper frequencies. In our case, Spaggy and I are going to be working on an 11 gigahertz radio. So just for context, that's how we're going to do this. The next step, number 4, we're going to work with the allocation. Again, we're going to work with ComSearch. We're going to share our project scope with them to help manage our frequency for this 11 gigahertz link. Number 5, we're going to, this is a registered link. This is a licensed link. We're not doing an unlicensed in this example. So we do have to register this link with the FCC. And just as a reminder, we'll be working with ComSearch to assist us with the registration process to ensure that we have all the information needed for this link and to ensure that it is a legal installation for us to do. The last thing is our vendor that we've selected in this example is Cambium. So if you're familiar with them, awesome. If not, I encourage you to reach out to not only them, but other vendors that sell microwave equipment and kind of build a relationship with them, because a lot of the equipment is similar in fashion, but there's different deals available to you to take advantage of. Do you have anything to add here, Spaggy?
No, just if you got to pay attention to your grant funding as well, because some of the manufacturers aren't, I guess, BABA compliant, Build America, Buy America. So you have to ensure that you're meeting the purchase requirements on your funding source. But that's the only thing I'd add.
For sure. Thank you. Next slide, Jordan. So we're going to reach the purchase application portion now. Again, this is an example. These aren't perfect numbers. Please don't go to a vendor and say, well, Brodie and Spaggy said this is how much it should cost. These are, again, just examples that we're working with. So for our microwave costs and all the associated gear that go with it, Spaggy and I are going to be spending about $30,000 to get the link up that we want to. The frequency coordination costs, we worked it out with ComSearch. It'll be about $1,000. And then, unfortunately, Spaggy and I don't have contractors available on our staff to do this, so we're going to contract and outsource. That'll be $15,000. And so the reason we left money in our budget as well is, again, for that contingency. I want to remind everybody here to build their budgets with contingency, because there are a lot of unforeseen things that can happen. So just be aware of that. Next slide, please, Jordan. So we're going to do a live demo. I actually have a radio here with me in the office. I hope you can see it. This is an 11 gigahertz radio. Okay, this is kind of the dimensions of it. This thing pumps out quite a bit. I will scoot in and make notice, if you can, always check the sides of your radio for damage. Make sure there's no damage. Make sure there's nothing wrong with it. Make sure all the components are there. It's the right licensing thing. And make sure that there's no errors with it. Otherwise, you will have to send it back to the manufacturer, because there's nothing worse than not only getting it on your bench, but getting it on a tower. I don't know if this has happened to you, Spaggy, but getting it on the tower and it not being functional. Something's wrong with it. It's damaged along the way. Worst case scenario. That hasn't thankfully happened to us yet, but just be aware of that if you're watching this video.
Yeah, we pretty much bench test like you do, so we'll suss that out before we spend the money to get on a tower.
It's always a good call. it's always something you have to be aware of, unfortunately, because it does happen. I mean, stuff does get busted, so just be aware of it. And right now, I'm going to dive into one of our deployed radios. If it's all right, Jordan, I'm going to take over and present. So this is one of our links that we have set up. Can everybody see the screen okay? Can you see it okay, Spaggy?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, sure.
So it is a little small, but I think I can see enough of it.
Give me a second here, and I'll be able to kind of show you the parameters and everything. So for us, we have this link set up. I'll just go over the basic radio parameters here. For our radio that we've set up, these are the transmit and receive frequencies for both sides of the radio. If you can see, let me just zoom in a little bit more for you. It should be a little better. So these are our two radios, and again, these are the two radios within the one microwave, okay? So keep that in mind. We have the transmit frequency here and the receive frequency, okay? They're both running the same. Make sure that's within your same realm that your microwaves are running. We didn't really talk about the receive level, and we can do that now. So this is at what's called a neg 43 and a neg 42. For us, and I don't know how it works for you, Spaggy, in your side of things, but for us, we shoot for low negative 30s and high negative 40s, because for us, that means we're receiving a good amount of signal between our microwave shot. Your goal is to get as low as you can, as close to zero as you can. But due to unfortunate circumstances with most reservations, there's a lot of terrain, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's multiple things in the way, or in Spaggy's case, he's working with really distanced microwave pathing. So he's got to work through a lot of those things. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, because that's basically what I wanted you all to see was what it would look like set up in this case.
Yeah, the audio cut out just a little bit, but I saw that you had it in the low negative 40s, and we do when we did the path calculations with the contract, or not the manufacturer, we usually get a sheet of what the expected receive signal would be, and we aim to get as close to that as possible. It's kind of technical, but one thing that we found out in the XPIC type of radios is that you have to get your polarities matched up. So when you do an XPIC, there's actually multiple radios. So you showed the one radio, but there'd be a second radio, and you can't have them kind of at an angle when they match up with each other. They have to be perfect. And so it looked perfect, but it was just ever so slightly off, and it was impacting our signal. So definitely, if you hire a contractor, make sure that they are hitting the mark on the polarity as well, not just the signal. But that's just something recent that we learned. Oh, you're on mute, Brodie. Sorry.
So sorry. I always do that. I was going to say, yes, I agree with you. Make sure you're within that. They call it the main, not a side pole, but a main pole is usually what our contractors refer to that as. So definitely ensure you're reaching that for sure, especially on those longer links. It's tough to do. Yep. All right. Next slide, Jordan, please. So that concluded our point-to-point example. Spaggy and I are going to run through a quick point-to-multi-point example now. And in this instance, we are talking about a sector or a base node providing service to multiple customer premise equipment models. So in this case, we'll be running through some Tirana gear, if you all are familiar with that. If not, how it works, just in summary and really quick. There's a base node. It's shooting out a frequency. In our case, it's CBRS or 3.5 that's shooting out. And we have the remote nodes or the customer premise equipment that's at homes that's receiving that and then pumping that into the house for them to get internet. I don't know if you have anything to add here, Spaggy.
No, that's pretty much it. Just trying to not have to buy a bunch of point-to-points, so you're consolidating it into one one individual sector. So it's when you got to get to multiple people.
For sure. Yep. Next slide, please, Jordan. So this portion we're going to cover just as we did previously in the point-to-point walkthrough. This will be a theory process here. This is just us walking through what we've experienced, all again in theory, of what we're going to do. And then later we'll jump into an example, and I'll show you what the Tirana Cloud Suite looks like when we jump in the portal later. But for now, we'll start with number one. Again, review and assess your funding. Make sure all of your items associated with this project have a line item within your budget to ensure that you are within your needs, your financial needs, and you're meeting those expectations of your finance department. But again, build a contingency within your budget. Just because it's a different project doesn't mean you can't have contingency in it. Number two, review and assess your service needs. In our case, what we like to do is look at the equipment that's available out there and how much it's actually producing as far as throughput goes. If it can handle, 1 gig up, 1 gig down per base node or whatever it may be. Definitely review your goal, what you want your customers to have shared between that base node, between your customers throughout whatever side of your reservation or wherever you're at, you decide to build. Number three, review and assess frequency availability. We work with ComSearch or Micronet again on this. If you're using unlicensed, like Speggy talked about earlier, there are unlicensed stuff that you can run within your network or within your reservation. But most of the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Speggy, most of the time the stuff you run from point to multi-point is either a licensed spectrum that you have to have, like the 2.5, which was granted to some reservations if they put in for it, some tribal reservations if they put in for it, or in our case, the 3.5 spectrum, which is a shared spectrum that we have to share within a couple of other entities if there are other entities within your area using that spectrum. I don't know how it is for you guys, Peggy.
It's not necessarily that there's just licensed. There's definitely a lot of options in the unlicensed space, but what we found is the licensed frequencies are the cleanest signal in our area, so therefore the best performance. We definitely, as an ISP, have to support the interference from even sometimes themselves, like some in the unlicensed space, because if you use like a 5 gigahertz point to multipoint and you have a 5 gigahertz on your Wi-Fi router at the home, sometimes they can jump on the same frequency and interfere with each other. And so hopefully there's smarter equipment that can detect that, but in the case that we had, it wasn't smart enough to do that, and it started interfering with itself. So when you can, I definitely recommend going with licensed.
For sure. And that brings us to the next thing. You'll have licensing costs with those. If you do something with license, again, work with ComSearch or Micronet or another vendor that you have access to. Number five, review and assess those licensing requirements with the FCC. I'm going to pause here because some reservations were granted that 2.5 license that came out, and there are build out requirements for that license. So be wary of those. I think the first one was out this year where you had to reach a certain amount of percentage on your reservation. So check with the licensed, whoever you're going through. I definitely reach out to the FCC or a representative from there to ensure you're meeting the build out requirements for the licenses you have access to on your reservation.
And I can make a short little plug. Today is March 27th. On April 10th is the deadline for what's called the AWS 3 comment period. And there's a section in there. We're trying to get a tribal priority window, just like the 2.5. So if you can, before that deadline, make a comment so that we can get another window going for another frequency that can potentially be used for point to multipoint like we're working on right now.
Sweet. Thank you for that, Speggy. Last thing, definitely review and assess your microwave equipment vendors. Definitely build around your budget and goal for them. I put Telrad, Tirana, and Cambium. There's a plethora of others out there. Speggy and I aren't sponsored by anybody. We just stuff we've worked with in the past. So just reach out to many vendors that you can and make sure they reach your budget needs and goal needs. Next slide, Jordan, please. So again, in theory, go through the proper procurement steps for purchasing this equipment. Make sure you license the spectrum. When you purchase a multi-point equipment, again, have that in mind that you purchase all the necessary items with the multi-point installation. For this right here, I'm going to pause and say, make sure whatever vendor you go with, they send you the correct SFP modules for that equipment. Small factory form pluggables that go in, the fiber jumpers, if you will, that go in, the optics that go in the equipment. Make sure they're the correct ones, because I ran into an instance where this base node was not working. We had the right optic, we had the cable was fine. We tested a copper cable, we ran that, it was fine, and it was working, but we wanted to use the fiber, obviously, to get more throughput out of it. And come to find out, again, it was my fault. We put in the wrong SFP module. It was the right speed rating. It wasn't a vendor specific one that company required. So definitely ensure you got the right modules and all the right equipment for whatever multi-point solution you're going with. And then next, again, contract with the company for the installation if you do not have it. Definitely build that relationship, because they can do other projects for you that you have within your broadband realm. So just build that relationship up so you don't have to worry about it later on. Next slide, please, Jordan. So this is the pretty basic of it for a base node installation. Just log into it again on a bench or on a table that you have. Log into it with default credentials. They usually have an install guide with it now. Ensure the system is operational. Thankfully, we haven't had a solution where we logged into it and it wasn't working. So just ensure that it is operating how it's supposed to. If you can upgrade the firmware, I'm going to stop right there, because we've reached a module where we had an example of a module where we were running this equipment and it looked fine on the bench, was good. Went to set it out there, didn't get nothing back. And so we tried a bunch of different things, Well, the vendor let us know just by happenstance. I happened to see him at a conference, hey, we're testing this stuff, it's not working. They said, oh yeah, you have to be at firmware version, yada, yada, yada. And our firmware versions were one below that. So that makes sense. Ensure that not only on your base nodes in our example, but also on the remote nodes, they're up to date and you can get to them, they can transmit what they're supposed to do. Otherwise, they may or may not work. So definitely upgrade them.
Yeah, we ran into an issue where the remote node and the base node were on the latest, but I guess the base node was on the latest firmware, but the remote nodes weren't, and they couldn't connect. As soon as we upgraded the remote nodes, everything started talking again.
Right.
Yeah.
So definitely check for that. Next, set the network parameters again. Obviously, whatever you have in your examples, build them out. Last step in this, number 5, test for us. It's always good to test your equipment before you do any installations. It's always to go, for us, we get a truck and a pole and we fire it up and we just test it in different areas where we have that equipment set up to see where realistically we can get our service out there. You can always, again, as a reminder, build stuff in theory with heat maps or design maps with the network planner or with the vendor. But the only way you're really going to know is if you go out there and test the equipment out in the real environment. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please, Jordan. So again, we're going to walk through an application process. Again, it's an example for you to follow that Spaggy and I are going to do. In this case, again, we have $50,000 to build out our project with the goal in mind of creating a multi-point link to provide internet to our customers within an area. The frequency, we decided to work with ComSearch in this case, but you can, again, work with whomever to do all of these frequency coordinations for you. You can allocate it again to manage. We had ComSearch help assist us with this as well. In this case, we're going to be using 3.5, which is a leased spectrum, which is a shared spectrum. So we're going to go through the shared access spectrum, the SaaS portal of Google. That's a whole presentation in itself later on. If you have time, maybe we could do another one like that. But register your, in your example or in your case, register your frequency with the FCC. Obviously, if you need to do that. The vendor in our case for this example is Tirana. So we've kind of mentioned that before, and we'll go through a couple of things here shortly. Next slide, please, Jordan.
I'll probably add, though, that the $50,000 budget is high because Tirana's kind of the creme de la creme equipment in terms of point to multi-point right now.
Yep, I'll give you that. Yep, for sure. So now we're going to purchase the equipment. And again, these are just example numbers that we've came up with. Don't quote us on this. Again, don't go to the Tirana people and say, hey, Spaggy and Brodie said in this presentation, this is what it costs. These are just examples that we've had. So again, for the gear and the microwave cost, it's $30,000. Frequency coordination. And correct me if I'm wrong, Spaggy, the example we're working with here, it's based on the amount of customers you have. So you pay a monthly fee for the amount of customers you have with the shared spectrum. If you have a different case for the 2.5 license, there is a different cost associated with that. But with any type of shared spectrum, you usually pay per customer for whatever frequency you're running.
Yeah, and not to get into the depths of CBRS, but it does have some frequency coordination. It's a little bit different because it's a different type of license. But for Tirana, I was curious, do you have to put it into the mapping for the SAS? And forgive me, I don't remember what that acronym means. I just know that you have to coordinate with the SAS.
Yeah, shared access spectrum portal.
Yeah.
We use in our case Google for that. There's other SaaS platforms you can use, other SaaS providers you can go through. We just have used that, and it's kind of worked out nicely for us. But you don't have to do Google SaaS. You can do whatever you'd like to do. And because you brought it up, Spaggy, the other thing that comes with the Tirana gear, you do have to have a certified professional installer, a CPI person on staff to ensure that these installations, not only with the base nodes, but the remote nodes are what go on the customer premise.
And from my understanding, it wasn't a heavy lift to become a CPI. It was fairly lightweight in terms of the amount of knowledge you're supposed to get for that cert, correct?
Correct. So for any of you watching, if you're watching this later, you can pop onto Coursera or whatever vendor you'd like to go through to earn that certification. It's a lot of theory and practical things. The basic idea of it is because it's a shared spectrum, you need to make sure that your azimuth, your degree tilts, the lat long, all the installation parameters associated with that equipment are perfect, are to the T, because again, it is a shared spectrum. So if anything's off, or if your remote node's facing away it's not supposed to, or base node's facing away it's not supposed to, you're misleading the other people that would like to run that shared spectrum frequency within your area. So there will be issues, obviously, if you're running equipment how it's not set up for you to run. And then again, in this example for purchasing equipment, we have the contractor costs, which is, again, 15,000 or so. And we do have to have a CPI on staff for that. Next question, please. All right, excuse me, next slide. Sorry, Jordan. Okay, so we reached the demo portion of it. I'm going to get logged in here. Spaggy, feel free to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about in this portion while I get this pulled up.
Okay. One thing that I was going to bring up for point to multi-point was kind of a mistake that we made early on. We pretty much went blindly into the vendor that we picked and didn't ask them to send out any gear to us to test out before we made the purchase, because we didn't have experience in that realm. So now anytime we go with a new vendor, whether it's for fiber or for wireless, we try and get a demo kit on site to do a test in our environment. I don't know if everybody can see the dense trees over here in the background of my picture, but when vendors say, oh yeah, we're good in tree areas, they're more thinking about this area, not that area. And so we definitely want to get some, I guess, equipment on site before we make that investment.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think in our case, we do a lot of stuff like that as well. We try to show pictures of, hey, these are our trees, right? These aren't just the clear cut trees that you're looking at. But again, I'm going to pull this up really quick, and hopefully let me know if you can or can't see my screen.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, it's coming up. I can see it. Yep.
Okay. So this is the dashboard on the Tarana Cloud Suite. Again, we're not sponsored by anybody. This is just a real live thing of what we have. Right now we have 18 remote nodes deployed in our network. It just kind of gives us an aggregate of our data from our customers. I'm just going to cover the map portion really quick so you can kind of see what it looks like. We have a few sites, but I'm going to focus on one primarily. So each of these smaller dots, can you see the screen okay, Spaggy, just to ensure?
Yeah, I can see. Sorry.
Each of these smaller dots are homes, and those are the remote nodes at each of the homes. These areas up here that where I'm hovering at now on this next to this little 3 here are the base nodes that are providing the internet to the customers. In our case, and in many cases, you should work with that vendor to see how many customers or how many customer premise equipment nodes can attach to a base node or a sector, because it helps you understand, again, you're sharing between this one base node, in our case, that throughput with all of these customers here, right? So you want to ensure that if you have 30 or 40 houses, right, that run, let's say they're on average, each of the households runs 5 megabits per second up, 25 megabits per second down, something like that. You want to ensure your base node can handle that, and that's something you'll need to work out with your vendor. And maybe it comes to the case that the vendor isn't able to produce that for you with the frequency that they have available to you. So they might offer you a different solution, which is okay. And if it's within your budget, definitely go through with it. I'm gonna stop sharing. But
Oh, geez, we're exploded onto me. um, so I was wondering, Brodie, if you're still there because I can't even see you.
I'm a liar.
There he is.
I would like to apologize to everybody on screen. I always hit leave studio when I mean to click. So I apologize. I do that on every call. Nothing up. But just to finish my thought there, it was to say that ensure you're working with your vendor to meet those goals that we set out in the theoretical process, right? Those budget needs and those goal needs that you have of envisioning your wireless solution for your residents.
Yeah, one of the mistakes that we made, not necessarily a mistake, I guess, it was just we didn't fully understand. We have a population, or like a potential residential population, if you will, the number of homes in the area of roughly 900. And when we first deployed our network, we deployed roughly 12 or 15 sectors into Hoopa. What we didn't realize is that we can only add anywhere between 15 and 25 customers to each sector without going over capacity on those sectors. So what looked awesome on the map was the heat map that was generated. It's like, oh, we got the entire valley. We're going to serve 100% of our community, but it only had the capacity for like the 7th of the community. And I was wondering if another thing that we, as part of that, it was the technical knowledge that we were lacking on what metrics to look at that would tell you if your sector was being oversubscribed or not. I was wondering, what do you look at when trying to determine whether you should stop installing subscribers to a sector?
Sure. So for us, we obviously work with the vendor in the beginning, and we kind of give them, hey, the lay of the land. This is how many homes are within this area. We expect this amount of customers to want to subscribe to our service. And then we go through the solutions that they have. In our case, let's start with the Tarana base node. Let's say, for example, that base node can produce, with the 3.5 spectrum, it can produce 400 megabits per second up and 1 gigabit per second down, something like that. What I like to do is take that and look at our customers, right, our take rate, and divvy that throughput up into those amount of homes. So that way I can confidently say within, let's say, 15 homes, right, I can offer our speed packages of 5 megabits per second up, 25 megabits per second down, or 10 megabits per second up, 50 megabits per second down. I can offer that confidently to these people because I've divided that theoretical throughput up in that base node into the amount of customers that we have in our homes. That's just kind of a small, quick, easy way I do it, just to be able to like have hard concrete numbers. I don't know if that makes sense in some instances or some examples, but it's just helpful for me because those are raw numbers that I can see, right? That I can plug into those homes.
So with that thinking, then the faster the package I'm going to offer to the community, the less people I can add to that sector.
Correct.
Okay,
Because
so we got to.
In theory, for me, they're going to reach that level, right? They may not, right? Someone may not use all of that 50 megabits per second down, but I'm just assuming, right, in my theory build out that they will be utilizing that. You know what I mean?
So there's some wiggle room there for oversubscription. Then you can maybe, even though the numbers hit exactly on the math, you can still add a few more customers to the sector because not everybody's using it at the same time, or some people just have a trickle and others are heavy users.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you go to the next slide, please, Jordan? Oh, that's it. How about that?
That's it.
And it's never the end in broadband, right?
Oh no.
That's great. I just wanted to share one thought, which was, Spaggy, did you pay attention at the last Tribal Broadband Bootcamp with the Cambium equipment that they were getting set up and some of the challenges that they were having because they have the different firmwares?
Yeah, I had to bring in some of my woes of experience with the Cambium equipment that we were using, and
to be clear, this was donated equipment, so we had it from a group that had been using it, and it came in different statuses, which made it a little more challenging.
Yeah, there was so you got to be careful with the manufacturer you go with, because sometimes they don't have a mature product. And for example, in this product, if you didn't have at the beginning of using the product, you had to use the beta software, and you never really want to use the beta firmware on your gear. But in this case, there was no such thing as a stable version, so they wanted you to use the latest and greatest that they had to offer. And also, because they weren't as mature, they had settings available for you to click on that actually weren't in production. Like they wouldn't do anything if you click those. So at the boot camp, we ran into both of those issues.
But also, I was surprised it took 20 minutes to upgrade the firmware, which is longer than as a non like tech person. I was just surprised at how long that took. So you got to be patient when you're doing that. You have a bullet for upgrade the firmware, but you got to be patient for it.
Yeah, that particular hardware was a little unique in that, where it had what's called like a dumb sector, but a brain. And so you had to upgrade the firmware on the brain that's down here. And then it took 20 minutes to update the dumb sector. And it was just weird. But
well,
that was fun.
We didn't have any questions come in, which is good because you all handled all the questions that I had prepared. Brodie, that was really terrific, and Spaggy came in with just the commentary I was looking for. This was exactly the conversation I had in mind, and so if anyone is out there being like, that's not what I was looking for, then it's my fault, because this is perfect from my point of view, and I really appreciate both of you sharing your experiences with us.
For sure.
Thanks.
I was here to help.
We're gonna end the video there. It's gonna be live on our social media pages. We welcome you to stay tuned to Waskawiwin's social media. We're gonna be doing future virtual events as well as in-person events. And anytime you have questions, feel free to send anything to info@waskawiwin.org or info@tribalbroadbandbootcamp.org, and one of us will try to get back to you. I'll tell you that we'll try. So please do reach out. We'll do our best, but we look forward to seeing you all at a future event. Thank you.
Awesome.